leaving the corporate world in her mid-20s to start an online business, learning to trust herself, and an exciting change coming to her own podcast, Cowgirl Talks. Our Uplevel Dairy featured young leader today is Emily Shaw Schaapmann, also known as Dairy Girl Fitness. This is the special podcast series for producers and professionals in the first 5 years of their dairy careers, and you can find it on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast as well as its own platform, Uplevel Dairy Young Leaders. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and it's my mission to connect you with others who are like you, driven to make a difference and determined to do it in the dairy industry. Whether you're on the farm or in the field, this is the place to plug in to hear how your peers are overcoming challenges and stepping up to lead the way as dairy's future innovators, decision makers, and movers and shakers. If you know someone in the first 5 years of their dairy career, send them a link to the show that's created just for them. And enjoy this conversation today with Uplevel Dairy Young Leader, Emily Shaw Schaapmann. We're going to take a little time today to get to know you, Emily, and a little bit of the behind the scenes of Dairy Girl Fitness and talk about the first 5 years of your dairy career. And so, Emily, welcome.
Hi, I am so excited to be here and having this conversation.
And equally, and Emily, so you and I have had the privilege of getting to know each other a little bit over the years, and I and many others in the industry have been able to watch you really grow and come into your own as a business owner with Dairy Girl Fitness and as an influencer. And I don't just mean social media influencer in that sense, but really a person that is influential in the dairy community too. And so give us a little snapshot. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh my gosh, well, I appreciate that, making me feel more important than I am. But Dairy Girl Fitness was really something that started for me out of not being able to feel like I had a place in the dairy industry. So I grew up in the dairy industry in a little bit of an untraditional way. And then I went to Penn State, graduated with an ag business major. And the goal was always afterwards to get involved in dairy promotion or dairy marketing in some way. And with that, it pivoted and changed a little bit when I moved to Georgia for my now husband, Ruben, and that's where his family dairy farm is. And so moving to Georgia, and then we ended up in Florida, there just is not as, I don't want to say as much opportunity, but it looks a little bit different than what I was used to in Pennsylvania. And I couldn't necessarily find a career in the dairy industry for what I was looking for. And with being homesick, graduating college, not being able to feel like I could find a career after doing everything right, I just felt lost, felt a little bit frustrated. And honestly, I was falling into a little bit of the pity mentality. And so in March of 2018, so about a year after I graduated from Penn State, I started the Instagram for Dairy Girl Fitness really as an outlet to combine my passions of health, fitness, and dairy promotion, and not just talking the talk about the benefits of dairy, but also kind of walking the walk with that. And through working at other careers, I worked at a feed mill, I worked at a bank, I had a couple different things going on. I built up Dairy Girl Fitness on the side throughout my Instagram. And I realized that I could turn this into a business. And I turned it into a business through online fitness coaching, working with women. And that wasn't necessarily ever my plan. It wasn't even a thought that had crossed my mind when I graduated from Penn State or even growing up of being an online fitness trainer or owning an online business. But I was able to leave working at a dairy feed mill in the fall of 2019 and go full time with online coaching for women. And so I've been doing that now for over 4 years, which I say feels like forever. I know that's really not that long in the grand scheme of things, but we've really been able to grow and evolve, and we've helped 500 plus women through our coaching. We have a team of myself. We have 3 other coaches. I work with other team members virtually, and it has just been really awesome and also kind of scary at times and kind of confusing at times of growing that business. But that's kind of where we're at today, and really just want to continue doing so, of helping women with their health, their fitness, their confidence, but also telling dairy story and allowing the women in the ag and dairy space to feel like they have a safe space to go to focus on their health and fitness goals and not feel guilty or berated for enjoying animal ag products.
Oh gosh. And Emily, everything you're saying hits home in so many ways. And I'll add a little on to where I see your fit as well in the dairy community. And you're giving a place for women like me and others to also refer our friends to that maybe have some questions about how dairy impacts their health and their physique and their long-term wellness. And your voice and a face that is so strong and powerful with educating in a way that really gets the messages across and shows by example how dairy can be part of a healthy lifestyle, which is such a big deal because there are so many other influencers out there in the social media world in fitness that go the opposite direction when it comes to how dairy affects their that healthy lifestyle. And so you serve that purpose as well.
Well, thank you. And I agree. I think so often it's already made to feel so confusing when it comes to nutrition. And sometimes it just feels impossible to know where to start. And then you throw on all the people talking about how terrible dairy is or meat is. It can just feel like a lost cause sometimes. And so that's where I really enjoy being able to, again, kind of walk the walk of showing my own health and fitness journey, but also showing the women that we help and showing that they can do it. And again, giving that space that you can come into Dairy Girl Fitness, feel amazing in your body, but not feel guilty for what you're consuming or what you enjoy. And so it is awesome to be able to create that space, then allow other women to connect with like-minded, empowering women who are cheering them on alongside me and my coaches.
I want to revisit one of the things that you shared initially, Emily, and I appreciate this so much because I think others will relate to it. And that is when you said that there was a time before you started Dairy Girl Fitness, after you had graduated from college and were finding your right place and space in the dairy industry. And you were very open and saying that that wasn't an easy time for you. And some of the things that maybe you thought were the what's next weren't the fulfillment that you thought that they could be. So dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, it can be really frustrating to feel, oh, I have my life planned out, I have the goals planned out, and then it doesn't come into play. And for me, it was really just learning that my plan maybe isn't always the right plan. And it was knowing that just because something isn't necessarily what I was planning doesn't mean it's not going to help me to get to where I am. And I can't remember the exact quote or what someone had told me, but it's looking at every opportunity as a stepping stone. So when I had an internship with an animal health company and they then didn't hire me full time, okay, it was still a great opportunity. I got to meet more dairy farmers in the Southeast. And then I worked at a bank as a credit analyst in a little cubicle. Didn't love it, but maybe it helped me create some structure. It helped me learn how to create a schedule. And then when I moved to Florida and just couldn't find a job, it forced me to start Dairy Girl Fitness, right? And then when I went to a feed mill and was working long hours, not a lot of pay, just did not love the job, that also then kind of cornered me into realizing, hey, I can continue complaining. I can continue just wallowing and not loving this and pretending that life is happening to me and not for me, or I recognize if I don't like this, I have to do something. And so everything was a stepping stone to kind of get to where I was. And in that moment, especially when you're a young kid, you're just graduating. Again, you feel like you do everything right. It can feel really hard to hear that and you don't want to hear it. But you have to be brutally honest with yourself of recognizing that you can keep doing the same things because it's comfortable, or you can take the chance of trying something else. And that was what I really convinced myself. When I went full time with Dairy Girl Fitness, I didn't really give myself a plan B. It was like, hey, I have to have I have to have X amount of clients to kind of make the same of what I'm doing now. And that's when I will feel a little bit more confident doing it. But even if it doesn't work out, I can get a part-time job. I can figure something out. I think so often we feel like we have to stay on the same path forever, but you literally have your entire life to find a career, find something you enjoy. And I think I just gave myself that chance and took the chance and did it.
I'm so glad that you shared those steps that were along your journey. And it's interesting because as you talk about them, I heard you use words like this experience forced me, like working as a credit analyst, forced you to learn the structure. And then working with the feed mill kind of forced a certain experience in your life. But let's play out two words, force versus freedom. And so force is how you felt at the time. But do you see how that experience of being in those situations actually led to some incredible freedom?
Yes. And that's where I had to shift my mentality into recognizing and looking at life as happening for me, not to me. There's never going to be this perfect path. I mean, maybe for some people, and even still, my life has not been that hard, but I was just caught in situations where I felt so frustrated. I felt lost. I did not feel fulfilled. And again, in that moment when those were all happening, I just felt like, why me? Why can't I find the right job? Why can't I find the career? But they were all leading me into creating something that I really enjoyed. And again, like you said, it forced me into getting creative and finding that freedom with Dairy Girl Fitness. And who knows what's down the road with all of this, but I know through that experience, it's really shown me that you can pivot, you can change, and it doesn't always have to be the same thing forever.
So as you talk about what you experienced in these first 5 years of your career, it was really a change of your mindset that you talked about here. And so I'm curious for you, do you see a parallel between the mindset shift that you experienced with your career and the mindset shift that you guide women through and how they feel about their health and fitness? Like, are the same things that you just were talking about of how you felt maybe kind of stuck or unsure or uncertain? And as you said, you decided at a certain point you had a choice and you could choose to look at those situations differently. Is that a parallel with coaching?
I feel like it definitely helped lead me into it and helped lead me into how to communicate with women and kind of have the conversation of, hey, change is uncomfortable, but also staying the same. And if you don't feel good in your body, that's also uncomfortable. And so it's kind of recognizing that we have to choose our hards and stepping into the unknown, stepping into changing our lifestyle, investing in ourselves, just doing new things. It's always going to feel uncomfortable. I mean, that's just life. But I think then we have to, again, be brutally honest with ourselves as which hard do we want to choose? Do we want to stay comfortable, but maybe unhappy and a little bit frustrated? Or are we willing to kind of take that chance on ourselves? And I think just showing myself that, hey, you can take the chance and it can turn out really good has helped me really communicate with women in a better way of just being able to go through that experience, but also recognizing that we can't always control what happens to us. We can't always control our schedule, control our family, judgment, whatever it may be, but we do have direct control over our actions. And that's really also what ties into a health and fitness journey. You're not always going to get to control the scale, what the gym is like, or what meal you're going to be able to get at a restaurant, whatever it may be. But you have direct control over your actions and how you show up for yourself every day, but also how you react. I think that was really what helped me in my journey. And also, again, what can help women in their health and fitness journey, because we know it's not always sunshine and rainbows being in our bodies and trying to feel better about that. But we do control how we react to situations, which will then determine usually how we act.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not just health and fitness, that extends to your outlook on other areas of life. And as we're talking about today, your career as well. We talked about the challenges of getting from graduation day from college to getting into your groove with becoming an entrepreneur and an independent business owner. So after making that decision in these years that you've now been doing this, what are some of the biggest challenges that have come up in that time frame?
Yeah. So it's definitely a different space that is newer, right? And so not everyone maybe understands it or has had the experience with it, which I totally get. And I think I talked about it a little bit earlier about just being able to not look at things in a negative light, but really try to view things as an opportunity, even before I started Dairy Girl Fitness, but also while I'm in Dairy Girl Fitness, if it's a business opportunity or a new idea that doesn't go to plan. But also, one of the biggest things that I've really had to work on is just being confident in my ability, especially as like I am my brand. I am my business. There's so many other facets to it with our clients, our other coaches, our online members, but like, we are our brand and it can feel really hard to sometimes feel like you're not good enough, you're not doing the right thing. And so I've really had to learn to trust myself and be confident in my ability with that. And also with being an entrepreneur, working from home, being online, it can be very easy to have the flexibility, but also kind of abuse that flexibility. So I've also had to work on finding my groove with what type of structure, what type of work schedule works for me. And for me, I've recognized that I love being able to have the flexibility, but I also need to make sure that I am productive and I am giving myself some sort of guidelines to make sure that I can show up for my business in the way that needs to be showed up for. So yes, really just being sure that I am confident in myself, even when maybe I am a little bit unsure, but confident knowing that I can get it done. I'm going to be able to figure it out and really trusting my gut. And I know what's going to be best for me and my business.
You say that with so much power and conviction, Emily. And what I know is that when a person can do that, it's because of something. is because of some experience where they had to be that. And so, is there a time that comes to mind where you really where you really learned that you could trust yourself, that you could dig deep for that inner confidence? Can you think of a time where maybe that was challenged and you were able to get through it? It may not have to be the pretty example, right? Like, but maybe sometimes it's, let's just face it. Easy things don't make us any better, right? Like easy things don't build character. It's the stuff where we want to quit, where we're down on our knees, right? So did you ever have a moment like that helped you to dig out your confidence from a deep place and find that inner trust in yourself?
Ooh, that's such a good question. And I know we don't necessarily want to look to others for validation, but I think throughout Dairy Girl Fitness, when I've been asked to speak at opportunity or to have the opportunity to speak at events, or I got to give a keynote at the Junior Holstein Convention in Pennsylvania. I think it was in 2021. And just having moments like that really were the reminders of what I'm doing matters and what I have to say is valuable. And again, we can't always look to others for that outside validation, but just looking back at the opportunities of when people have asked me to speak or when someone has come up to me and said what I'm doing has helped them, I think it's so easy to look at what we're not doing right or what we're not doing enough of, or we could pivot this way on social media. We could do that with our business. We could grow a different email list, whatever it may be. But for me, I like to keep a little wins folder on my phone of all the things that women have experienced with us and the different kind messages people have sent to me. And I think that's just the reminder of there's always room to grow, but it's showing us that what we do matters and we have helped change lives. And I think that's really what has kind of helped me. And just saying yes also to opportunities that were scary and that I would honestly love to say no to. So that keynote speech that I did, I'm sure it wasn't the most amazing keynote speech that they've ever had. And I'm sure I had plenty of room to grow with that, but it was so scary for me. Like, so that was scary. Oh my gosh. It was hundreds of kids, hundreds of parents. I grew up in Holstein. And once I got in the flow of it, it was fun. But just doing things like that force you to be confident, right? And I know I've gotten to come to one of your events and had the opportunity to speak. I've gotten to be a part of Dairy Girl Network. I got to speak at Young Farmers and Ranchers Farm Bureau Florida Convention this year. And when people ask questions, when people come up to talk to me afterwards, it's just a reminder of, yeah, like I'm doing a good thing. And forcing yourself into those situations makes you get uncomfortable. But then afterwards, you're like, wow, that was great. I mean, I did it. And that really kind of helped me feel more confident.
Well, and going back to the example you shared, when I had an event here in Wisconsin, I've hosted every year. It's called Bloom for women, egg women in Northeast Wisconsin. I think that was one of your first speaking gigs, right? But here's the two things that I remember about that. For one, you were amazing, of course. But the other thing that really stood out was there was a group of women that had come just for you. And some of them were there. They were clients of yours, right? And then they came and brought friends, but they were from a little bit further away than the typical circle that attends the event. I think that's a testimonial to what you shared earlier with that validation. And I would say I would switch the word from validation to confirmation, right? Like you don't need them to tell you that what you're doing is valuable, but them showing up and being there because you were there and they got to meet you in person, they got to introduce you to their friends, that is confirmation that the path you're on is the right one. And so being on the other side, I've seen this for you and so excited to see how that continues to show itself for you, Emily.
So am I.
Another thing that you talked about with challenges that you face as an entrepreneur and a business owner in these first 5 years of your career, you talked about structure, productivity, time management. And so, do you have a couple of quick tips or hacks that have really helped you to get stuff done?
I definitely feel like I could still improve upon this. And maybe it's just my work style and my personality. But I think it's beneficial to still give yourself some sort of work times. And again, maybe if like you're a night owl, work at nighttime, or if you're a morning person, set that in the morning. But I think it's very helpful still to give yourself maybe some sort of structured work hours. That is something that just kind of forces me to focus on getting things done. And I haven't utilized this yet, but I know a lot of friends have, especially who work online. But it's the little timer cubes. And I think they have, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, but kind of setting little timer cube blocks for yourself and forcing yourself to really be productive within that time, and then maybe giving yourself a break afterwards. But one of the things that have also really helped is just stepping away from my phone and stepping away from social. I can get very caught up in, oh, I'm on my phone because this is my job. I'm looking for ideas. I'm looking for inspiration. But really just being honest with yourself of recognizing what distracts you and removing that as much as you can. So for me, really setting a goal this year for less screen time, putting my phone away when I don't need it. And so I would say those are a few of the things that help me. And also starting my day or trying to with a workout or some sort of movement, right? You don't need to work out every single day, but I know I feel more focused. I feel more productive. I feel better when I show up for myself in some capacity and keep promises to myself. And how you start your day is really going to set the tone for the entire day. So, did you show up for that workout? Did you hit the snooze button? Really, just starting the day, keeping promises to yourself really allows me to show up in a little bit more of a confident way and honestly, a more productive way.
Are you a morning routine person?
I could be better at it. Again, that was one of the things we talked about stepping stones that I really had to get good at being productive when I worked full time and started Dairy Girl Fitness on the side. And so that really helped me get in a morning routine. And now I do still aim to, get up, stay off my phone, plan out my day, eat breakfast, try to get a workout in. So I do still aim to have some sort of structure with it, but maybe not as productive as I once was when I was forced in a little bit of a smaller time frame.
It's good tips. So we've talked about some of the challenges that you faced, and we talked about the ways that you overcoming. And so I'm curious for you now, Emily. You are now 5 years into being an entrepreneur. So if you could go back to like 22-year-old Emily, so just out of school, entering the workforce, what would you tell yourself?
I think one of my biggest tips that I feel like I took advantage of this soon when I did start, but for anyone listening, is asking for help. And I think so often we feel like we have to forge the path on our own, but very often where you want to go and what you want to do has already been done. And so that means that there's going to be someone there to help you. And asking for help, investing in your knowledge, investing in your skills is going to be a game changer in helping you do what you're doing more efficiently and probably more successfully. When I was still working at the feed mill, I knew that, hey, I could do online coaching here. And so knowing I didn't really know what I was doing though, and I wanted to start doing it as quickly as possible, I hired my own online personal trainer. So I got that firsthand experience with it. And I also that summer joined my first group business mentorship. And it was a lot of money. It was kind of like all of the money that I had at the time. But because I did those two things, I was then able to go full time that fall. And if I didn't do that, both of those things, honestly, I could have just continued to try to figure it out on my own or just hope for the best and just continue using it as an excuse of, I just don't know what I'm doing. So asking for help is so important and beneficial and something that I recommend everyone doing. And even if it stretches you a little bit thin, again, what I did with investing in that business mentorship kind of stretched me pretty thin, but I knew I was going to get back what I put into it. And so that was so incredibly helpful. And something that I've really learned throughout my time with Dairy Girl Fitness, and we've kind of chatted about this, is you don't have to be everything to everyone. And it is important to modify, adapt, and evolve. And again, like I said earlier, you can change, you can pivot, but when you are doing something, you don't have to make it for everyone. And I think that's something that I've really had to focus on because, again, with social media, we can compare every aspect of our life, of our business to literally anything and everyone. And it can always feel like maybe you're not doing enough. Maybe you need to be doing something differently, different approach, different with your content, different with your business. And so for me, it's kind of finding that way to like stay in your lane, but not in a way that you're putting yourself in a box, but find what you enjoy, find what you're good at, and do that. And if that does change and evolve, that's okay. But don't feel again like you need to be everything to everyone.
Oh, it's such good advice, Emily. And what you just shared is a great segue into a change that you're making in one of the ways that you reach out to others in the dairy industry and beyond. And that's through podcasting because you're part of the Podcast Host Club. So tell us a little bit about your podcast and also some changes, some really exciting changes and pivots that are coming our way through that.
Yeah, so I'm in the podcasting world, and I feel like I pushed off podcasting for quite a while just because I didn't necessarily know how to do it on my own in terms of just finding that other way to put more ideas into. But I figured I could do this and I would have really a lot of fun with this if I could do this with other people. And so this summer, and technically we kind of launched it in the fall, but I started the Cowgirl Talk podcast. And at that time, I started with two other girls, Emily Matsky and Haley Pfeiffer. And it was really just an outlet for me to be able to talk about more topics in the dairy industry, in the ag industry, and what it's just like being a woman in that space and what it's just like being a woman growing up and figuring out what the heck are we doing with our lives. And so we had 10 episodes this past fall, and it was a lot of fun and really got to learn a lot about what does go into podcasting. I mean, it is a lot of work, the editing, the recording, the social media side of things. But coming this year now in 2024, we are going to be pivoting Cowgirl Talk a little bit, and we're going to be shifting who is hosting Cowgirl Talk. So Emily and Haley are going to be going on their own ways, and they're amazing. They're still incredible people, and I'm so excited to watch their businesses grow. They just recognize that, hey, with podcasting, it is a lot. And so it's something that they want to put their time elsewhere. But now Cowgirl Talk is going to become a sister podcast. So I'm going to be hosting Cowgirl Talk with my sister, Becca Shaw. That's not going to be her last name for much longer. And sometimes she goes by Beck, sometimes she goes by Rebecca. But I'm very excited for Cowgirl Talk to still be a space where we get to have more in-depth conversations about just really what it's like growing up, figuring out life. And I know, we're all close to 30 in our 30s, both of us, but there's still a lot of things to figure out. And I feel like it's just conversations that I don't always maybe feel fit into my content on social media. And again, my true passion as well is agriculture and dairy. And I want to be able to dive into those topics a little bit deeper. And so really just going to lean into all of that, hopefully have some more guests on that are experts in more of their areas, whether that's within the personal side of things, the girl chat side of things, or also within the ag chat side of things.
Oh, and I can only imagine the energy and excitement that will be through the Cowgirl Talks podcast between you and your sister, Becca. And Becca has such a beautiful passion in her heart for doing so many of the same things in the way that she communicates within the dairy industry and her involvement. And so great things that our listeners can look forward to. So if you're not following Cowgirl Talks right now, tell us where they can follow you and find you and Becca having these incredible conversations.
Yeah, so if you love sister banter, there's going to be plenty of that. But yes, I'm very excited. Becca she kicks ass and she does a lot of incredible things. And we like to say she's the millennial corporate cowgirl. I'm more of the laid back, fittish cowgirl. And so the podcast right now, it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We also upload it to YouTube. And we are on social media. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and it's all Cowgirl Talk. Cowgirl Talk or Cowgirl Talk Podcast. Either way, try to keep it very easy to find across the board.
Awesome. And we'll include links for Cowgirl Talks and also Dairy Girl Fitness, of course, in our show notes for this episode. And so, Emily, in our last couple of minutes here as we wrap up, I know you talked about a couple of things that were really helpful to you in your career. And one of them was making an investment in yourself and in some coaching. And I think that I totally support that. Big believer in that myself. But I think it really helps get a person farther, faster on the track that they want to go. But I'm curious, any other resources that you want to toss out to young professionals or producers in the dairy industry?
Ooh, yes, I would love to do that because, again, I think it is so beneficial to surround yourself with people who are better at what you're doing than you are, right? I mean, it is really important to put yourself in a room of people who have been where you want to be. And so getting involved can be so beneficial. And a few things that I've gotten involved in is Dairy Girl Network. So for any of the women listening, Dairy Girl Network has been really beneficial just because they have a lot of virtual retreats, a lot of different educational sessions, but also they have in-person conferences. And there's actually one coming up this fall. And that was where I've met a lot of really incredible women. It's actually where I met my previous co-host of Cowgirl Talk, Haley. And so that's a really incredible one, whether it's virtual, in person. And I also just completed YDLI last year. So Young Dairy Leaders Institute, they're starting their next round in a couple weeks, but I completed my phase last year. And that was something that was very, very beneficial to force you out of your bubble, learn leadership skills, learn communication skills, but also, again, really connect with a variety of people in the ag and dairy space across all ages. And something as well, I know every state's going to be different on this, but most states do have different leadership organizations that you can become a part of, whether that's specific to dairy, whether that's specific to ag. And just an example of in Florida, right, we have the Young Farmers and Ranchers organization that's a part of Farm Bureau, but it's, just meeting everyone a little bit of where they're at within their age. So those would be a few places that I would look at right away. And I'm sure there's even more, but those are the ones that I have a little bit more experience of and have the testimony of they're awesome and everyone should do them if you're not already.
Well, what a great list of resources for other young professionals and producers in the dairy industry, Emily. But above and beyond that, thank you for the genuine and helpful advice and sharing of your story of some of the hard things, but then of the incredible ways that you've been able to now build a business in 5 years that includes impacting 500 women on their own health and fitness journeys, a team of 4 coaches, and being an advocate for dairy and the healthy lifestyle and fitness. And so, Emily, it has been such a pleasure to have you as our featured young leader on the Uplevel Dairy Young Leaders podcast.
Thank you.
You just heard from Emily Shaw Schaapmann with Dairy Girl Fitness. You can find the links in the show notes to Dairy Girl Fitness as well as Cowgirl Talks podcast. Thank you for listening to Uplevel Dairy Young Leaders. Find these episodes on Uplevel Dairy Podcast as well as the Uplevel Dairy Young Leaders podcast channel. And do your friends in their early dairy careers a favor by sharing this podcast with them. If you want a space to network and plug in with other producers and professionals in the first 5 years of their dairy careers who are driven to make a difference and determined to do it in the dairy industry, join our Facebook group at the link in the show notes. And be sure to head over to upleveldairy.com where you can join the Uplevel Dairy community. This will make sure that every time we drop a new episode, it ends up right in your inbox. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and thank you for listening to the Uplevel Dairy Young Leaders podcast.